It is just before dawn over the prehistoric floodplains that will one day be western Argentina. The sun hasn't risen yet, and in the low light, with fog rolling over the area, a group of sauropods, Notocolossus, are walking to the stream to drink. These herbivores can reach a staggering 28 meters in length, but this group consists of juveniles barely 1 meter long. They do not have any protection against large predators, and so they are moving to the stream early before most diurnal predators are awake. As they cautiously walk forward, one female lags behind, knowing she will have to wait for the others up front to clear out anyway. As she feeds on some ferns, she notices just how thick the fog is, the only sound being the barely audible noise of the slow-moving stream. She gets ready to catch up with her family group, some of which are still drinking, others moving to return to better cover, and a few looking up at the sky, still as statues. She feels a light gust of wind come from behind her, shifting the fog to her sides and in front of her. More eyes look upwards, and more bodies go still. She senses something impact the ground behind her, something large, yet so light. Moments later, two long, thin, branch-like limbs land to either side of her, leathery wings held tight against a bone-like finger. All the others are still now, and finally she sees the shadow cast over her. Cast so far, it covered half the herd. Terrified, she turned her head and looked up at the figure that towered over her. A long, thick neck covered in feathers stretched towards the sky, holding an enormous skull that was mostly a beak. The monster's skull turned and looked down on her with one blank, black eye. She moved trying to run, and the herd of juveniles did the same. She got about 4 steps when the enormous beak struck downwards with lightning speed and pinpoint accuracy. The little sauropod was impaled on the end of the monster's deadly weapon, killed in a flash. The creature withdrew its beak and then opened it, picking up its victim and then effortlessly throwing its head back and swallowing the 1-meter dinosaur down its throat. Unfulfilled, the predator went after the fleeing juveniles. Its long strides covered the same distance in one step that took the sauropods dozens. It struck again, impaling a male in the hips. It squealed in pain, and continued to do so as it was lifted into the air and thrown back into his attacker's mouth. Even as he was being swallowed, his cries could still be heard, and his struggles could be seen as he descended down its long neck. Another was taken. This time the predator didn't bother stabbing first. Its jaws snapped around the Notocolossus' neck and lifted up. It cried out, but its sounds were cut short as the hunter shook its head once and snapped the victim's neck. The herd ran into the foliage, the thick fog obscuring the monster for a time, before its beak stabbed through the mist and tore another of the group into the air. Things only got worse as a new predator attacked. An Abelosaur, 6 meters long with a blunt snout, came out of the fog and grabbed one of the little Notocolossus in his own jaws. The herd scattered in terror, disappearing into the foliage and the fog. The Abelosaur dropped his meal, putting one foot on its side and began feeding, but as he raised his head, he looked into the fog that the juvenile sauropods had come from. There was a shape there. At first he thought it was a tree, but then it moved, and its movements froze him in place. The creature that walked through the fog was 4 meters tall, and despite its thin appearance, it seemed to give off an aura of pure danger. He had seen these before, these titanic flyers that walked like giant ghosts through the fog. He stared into its eyes, those blank, black eyes. He had stared into the eyes of other carnivores, and there was often something that could be gleaned from them. Anger, hunger, caution, plotting even. But these eyes, there was nothing. And with that, the carnivorous dinosaur had one thought cross his mind. Run. He grabbed the dead sauropod in his jaws, turned tail, and sprinted as hard as he could into the fog, wanting nothing more than to get as far away from it as possible. Hello fellow travellers and welcome back. Today we will be breaking down one of the largest animals to ever fly, Thanatosdrakon. Thanatosdrakon's first remains were discovered in 2018 in western Argentina from the Plotier Formation. It would be named in 2022 as Thanatosdrakon amaru, the genus name meaning dragon of death, and the species name referring to an Incan deity, roughly translating to flying serpent. It lived between 89 and 86 million years ago in the late Cretaceous. Thanatosdrakon belonged to the Asdarchidae family in the Quetzalcoatlinae subfamily, so closely related to the more famous Quetzalcoatlus. Two individuals have been found. The holotype contains most of the body minus the neck and skull, while the paratype consists of a left humerus. With these, scientists were able to calculate its estimated wingspan. The holotype individual is believed to have a 7-meter wingspan. However, though the paratype is only one bone, it is significantly larger than the holotype. And so, scaling off the holotype's measurements, it's believed the paratype specimen had a 9-meter wingspan. So it's likely the holotype wasn't fully grown compared to the paratype. It also means that Thanatosdrakon is the largest pterosaur ever discovered in South America, being close in size to other large asdarchids such as Hapsygopteryx and Aerotitan, and based off of them, it likely weighed somewhere around 200 to 250 kilograms. Though we don't have the skull of Thanatosdrakon, it is usually depicted as looking similar to Quetzalcoatlus or Cryodrakon from Canada. Asdarchids are well known for their massive skulls and necks, so it's highly likely Thanatosdrakon's was similar. So why did their heads have these crazy proportions? Asdarchids are believed to have evolved to become a strange group of top terrestrial predators. They were fully capable of flight, but when hunting they would walk across the ground, striding on their long legs with their wings tucked tight to their body. They would then use their long necks and jaws to reach down and pluck up small to medium prey that weren't fast enough to escape them. Interestingly, asdarchids don't seem to have a very powerful bite, so it's likely they swallowed prey whole or lifted the prey into the air and slammed them back down on the ground to stun or flat out kill them in one blow. Similar to the modern Seriyama. The group's behavior has been compared to ground stalks like the marabou stalk. Looking at their skeletons, it seems they would have had a hard enough time simply holding their heads up, let alone picking up smaller struggling animals. Well, a recent study has discovered how their thin-looking necks could do so. The neck vertebrae are long and quite tube-like, and like the rest of the bones, are very thin and low weight, so they were light enough to fly. Inside the vertebra, however, we can see that running along the center of the bone is a neural tube, and connecting the tube to the outer walls are thin sheaths of bone, called tuberculae. These structures made the bones very strong without greatly increasing their weight. More importantly, they increased the vertebrae's buckling load, allowing Thanatosdrakon and other members of its family more than enough strength to pick up prey in their beaks with ease. The skull, while usually quite long and tall, is also quite thin, and had this large opening called the nasal and orbital fenestra that made the skull significantly lighter. The fossils that were found were in quite good condition and include bones that haven't been described in other asdarchids, including the notarium. These are fused thoracic vertebra over the ribs, seen in some pterosaurs and some modern birds. Their purpose is to aid the flight muscles and assist the chest against the forces generated by the movement of the wings. So what was Thanatosdrakon's role in its environment? The area it was found in was a seasonal floodplain, and a few different types of dinosaurs and other animals have been found there. These include multiple large titanosaur species, smaller saltosaurs, a large coelurosaurian theropod, an abelisaur, ornithopods, crocodiliforms, mesoeurocrocodilians, turtles, and even a small mammal. Though it was little threat to the largest of the sauropods, Thanatosdrakon was likely a contender for top predator in the region, most likely hunting down small species and the young of larger species. It may have competed with the large theropods it lived with, but just because it would have been a lot lighter than these dinosaurs doesn't mean it was an easy target, as it was about 3.5 to 4 meters tall and could probably use its wings in an intimidation display in order to scare off other predators. And of course Thanatosdrakon could fly away if things got heated. Thanatosdrakon is another great find that adds another member to the terrifying Asdarchid family, while also giving us well-preserved remains that increase our knowledge of the group as a whole. But what do you think of Thanatosdrakon? And for my question of the week, how cool would it be if there was a film, video game, or some other bit of media that used an Asdarchid as its antagonist or movie monster? Come on. Also, that's my original idea, do not steal. What lesser known pterosaur would you like me to do a breakdown on next? And until then, please like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Silence returned to the edge of the stream, and the monster pterosaur stood immobile, scanning the area patiently. As the fog formed around it, the now much fuller predator flexed out his 9-meter wings, casting a great shadow over the earth. With that, he placed his hands back down, and with one swift movement launched himself into the air. The Thanatosdrakon ascended above the fog and the floodplains, rising higher and higher till he leveled out and soared on the winds. He was master of these skies, but on the land he was a true terror, a creature that inspired both awe and dread, not unlike the mythical dragons that he would be named after.